You've expressed a desire to work at the front desk, but the front desk is the face of the hotel. Can someone with a plain appearance and not highly educated like you really handle it?
I was laughed at about my looks and education during the final interview at the hotel I had always admired. I thought it was none of his business. Indeed, my appearance is ordinary, and I didn't graduate from a prestigious university. But you don't have to be so blatant in front of other job applicants, do you? Ignoring my sulky attitude, the interviewer, with a mocking tone, wrote a long sentence in a foreign language on the whiteboard.
Our hotel welcomes guests from all over the world. We must be able to communicate in all languages. Here, try translating this French. You probably won't understand it, but if you do, I'll give you $1 million.
I couldn't help but smirk internally as I stood up. I read the sentence without any difficulty, and then I said in French to the astonished interviewer, "I understood it. Please give me the $1 million as promised." The interviewer turned pale and trembled, and this incident would greatly change my life. My name is Emily Johnson. I was raised in Japan until just before I started elementary school. Afterward, due to my dad's job in a trading company, we moved frequently, living in various parts of the world. We went to Europe, Southeast Asia, and China, among other places. The climate and cityscapes were different from Japan. People have different skin colors and speak different languages. My parents seemed to fit in quickly wherever we went. Even without speaking the language, they would communicate through gestures and soon become friendly with the locals. I was different, though. Being shy, I found foreigners who approached me out of curiosity and spoke in unfamiliar languages intimidating, even scary. In some places, being visibly different made me a target for bullying. Thus, making friends was out of the question for me. When we moved to a new country, a child from a neighboring family spoke to me. He was older than me, named Louis. He has light brown hair and eyes of a similar shade. He looked entirely foreign but could speak Japanese.
"Emily, I know a great place. Let me take you there."
I was always alone after school, so Louis talked to me almost every day and tried to take me out. Initially, I refused, but I was eventually won over by his persistence. A magnificent flower field in full bloom. The top floor of a tower with a view over the town. The courtyard of an ancient church. Louis was right to boast, as each place was breathtakingly beautiful. We talked about various things until sunset. Louis's dad is Japanese, but his mom is foreign. I mean, he's a mixed race. After being born and raised in Japan, they moved to this country last year because of his dad's job. He mentioned being teased and bullied for his looks when he was in Japan, but it's the inside that matters more than the appearance. By working hard on his studies and sports, achieving good grades, he managed to change how others saw him, and Louis made an effort to speak up and reach out. Regardless of whether they were someone who harassed others, he tried to interact with them without hesitation. Being a boy, there were times when I got into fights. Eventually, Louis made a lot of friends. Louis said he didn't mind the change in environment at all. I envied him like that. As if he saw right through my feelings, Louis offered to help me change. I was actually lonely all this time. I was secretly happy that Louis talked to me so many times. So, I nodded and took the hand that Louis reached out to me. After that, I decided to learn the language of this country with Louis's help. To learn a foreign language, you just have to try speaking it. Instead of going straight home from school, I started to hang out and play with the kids from school with Louis. However, unfortunately, my dad got transferred after 6 months, and I had to say goodbye to Louis. But by that time, I had made many friends with whom I became close, and I had become much more outgoing. Even though I continued to live abroad, I had changed. When I was shy, I used to feel scared of foreigners who looked different. But when I approached them proactively, they were very friendly. It was Louis who gave me the opportunity to change. I worked hard to learn the language of the country and made an effort to communicate with the people living there, making many friends.
You've become so much brighter, Emily.
My parents would say happily when I started bringing home foreign friends. It seems they were worried about me not fitting in because we moved from one foreign place to another. Eventually, at the same time as my high school graduation, my dad got the chance to return to the USA. He landed a good position thanks to his accomplishments, so we'll spend some time in the USA. Even though I started attending a university in the USA, I never lost touch with the friends I made abroad. We kept in touch through letters and social media. Around that time, I started to harbor a dream. Just like I was kindly treated abroad, I wanted foreigners visiting the USA to have a pleasant experience. To realize this dream, I decided to work at a hotel that is frequently used by foreigners. For my job search, I chose a major international hotel chain that operates worldwide as my top choice. After submitting my entry sheet, I cleared the written exam and both the first and second interviews. The final interview was conducted in groups of 3, where we answered questions posed by the interviewers. If I go through this interview, I can work at my dream hotel. I clenched my trembling hands and consciously made a smile to hide my nervousness. However, while the interviews had been peaceful until now, the atmosphere changed drastically in the final round.
Don't you even know this? It's common knowledge in any hotel.
There were detailed critiques about my background and specialized questions about the job. As expected, the content of the interview got tougher for the final round. Especially, the male interviewer in charge was overly domineering. Perhaps this could be called a stress interview. At the slightest hesitation in my answers, he openly sighed or made disparaging remarks. It was enough to make me feel intimidated.
Emily Johnson, how? You wish to work at the front desk, but the front desk is the face of the hotel. Can someone with a plain appearance and not highly educated like you handle it?
I thought it was none of his business. Indeed, my appearance is ordinary, and the university I graduated from is newly established and not well known. First of all, isn't it sexual harassment to comment on someone's appearance during an interview?
All 3 of you are proficient in foreign languages. But knowing Spanish isn't enough. Our hotel welcomes guests from all over the world, not just Spanish-speaking countries. Can you handle being spoken to in a language you don't know?
The interviewer, with a mocking attitude, looked down at his text and then wrote a long sentence on the whiteboard.
Try translating this. You probably won't understand it, but if you do, I'll give you $1 million.
At a glance, I recognized it was in French. However, the sentence was taken from a magazine published locally and included names of people and places, making it impossible to translate with just conversational proficiency. As a result, the other 2 candidates were trying to read it but were puzzled by unfamiliar words. I guess he really went all out with $1 million. I thought to myself with a wry smile as I stood up.
Oh, what's this? Leaving already?
No, it's just that the question is too easy. I read the sentence thoroughly. I remembered the time spent with Louis when I struggled to learn French. Keeping in touch with friends I made in France, even after we parted ways, helped me master reading and writing in French. I read the sentence without hesitation, and I said in French to this stunned interviewer, "I've read it. As promised, please give me $1 million." Not sure if he heard me or was at a loss for words, I then said in English, "Please stop mocking. A man keeps his word, right? Pay up $1 million. Or was it all just a bluff and you can't pay?"
What? What insolence? You're not getting hired.
I was infuriated. The interviewer was a hotel employee, potentially a future supervisor, but I was fed up with the exchange during this interview. I couldn't work under someone like that. Being rejected is fine by me.
What did you say?
I'm withdrawing my application. I don't want to work under someone like you. After saying it, I thought I might have gone too far. Living abroad, I learned that if you don't speak up clearly about what you're thinking, it won't be understood. There's no culture of inferring or understanding each other without words, like in Japan. The interviewer probably never expected a candidate to speak to him that way.
A brat like you won't get hired anywhere.
The interviewer started yelling, his face turning red. Then, possibly because his voice carried out into the hallway, a man entered the room.
What's all this noise about? Aren't we conducting interviews here?
He appeared in his late 30s, dressed in a finely tailored suit. At first glance, I could tell he held a significant position.
Mr. President, the candidates are being interviewed.
He's the president. Then, please listen. I interrupted the interviewer's attempt to explain and spoke in French. As expected, he responded to my words. I was told during the interview that due to my appearance and educational background, I wouldn't be suited for the front desk at the hotel. However, I understand that this hotel has many international guests. Isn't it strange to judge based solely on appearance and education? Shouldn't hiring decisions be made based on the individual's qualities and abilities? Looking at the man identified as the president, I was somehow reminded of the days I spent with Louis in France. Feeling as if I had returned to those times, I spoke rapidly. The interviewer seemed not to be as proficient in French as he claimed, unable to comprehend what I was saying. Pointing at the white board, I added, I was told if I could read this, I would be given $1 million. Isn't that taking mockery of candidates too far? Noticing my gesture towards the white board, the interviewer's face showed he realized his mistake. Probably, this was not included in the interview curriculum. The president listened intently, nodding, and then directed a stern gaze at the interviewer.
Interviews are supposed to be an essential process for making hiring decisions. It's not something to be determined by personal biases. You failed as an interviewer. Further actions will be taken against you.
The interviewer's shoulders slumped as the president spoke. Subsequently, a senior HR person was called, and the interviewer was escorted out. We were informed that a different interviewer would be assigned to us, and the interview would be rescheduled. The final interview held on another day went smoothly, and I received an offer. It was from the hotel I had first prioritized. I decided to join the company immediately. After 3 months of training, I was assigned to the front desk, as I had hoped. I was still not accustomed to the work and made mistakes. However, I always kept a smile, regardless of who the guest was, and made it a point to offer help to anyone in need. One day, while I was on duty at the front desk, I spotted the interviewer from that time. According to a senior colleague, his name was Richard, and he was the head of the customer consultation room. The customer consultation room is a department that often receives complaints and can be stressful. It became clear that Richard had been taking a high-handed attitude towards candidates and vendors he couldn't oppose, venting his frustrations on them. As a result, he was demoted to cleaning duties. The president personally told him to relearn what hospitality means. One day, after handling the reception for a group of guests and taking a break, I saw Richard in front of the stairs, diligently cleaning. He was bending over and cleaning hard. The hotel entrance is visible and must be kept clean at all times. Despite his demotion, Richard seemed to be working hard without becoming disheartened. Engrossed in his cleaning, Richard failed to notice a bucket behind him and knocked it over. Unfortunately, a guest was passing by at that moment, and the dirty water almost splashed onto them. Richard hurried to apologize, but the guest appeared to be Chinese and did not understand his words. Seeing the Chinese guest becoming increasingly displeased, I quickly approached, and I apologized profusely in Chinese, resolving the situation smoothly. After the guest had left, I helped with the cleanup.
Thank you. You saved me.
Completely different from the interview, Richard thanked me.
By the way, that's impressive. How many languages do you speak?
Including conversational levels, roughly 10. Richard seemed taken aback by my answer. He then pondered with a serious look.
Being able to speak many languages is a rare talent indeed. I can manage Spanish. I'm also studying French and Chinese, but I have a long way to go.
My ability to speak multiple languages was partly due to living abroad for a long time. Studying several foreign languages while in the USA must be challenging. Although Richard seemed like an unpleasant person during the interview, it appeared he had a diligent side.
But watch me. I'll learn to speak 11 languages and become your boss.
Richard said with a mischievous grin. I laughed and responded, "Oh, I still haven't received that $1 million from the interview time, have I?"
That was.
Just kidding. Please do your best, Richard. Ignoring the flustered Richard, I returned to my workplace. After work that day, I was approached by the president, despite being young enough to have become the president. He was well regarded for hardly ever staying in his office, preferring instead to inspect the premises. He is known to see off guests at the entrance in the mornings and pays close attention to how the employees work. His motto is to reward the good and punish the bad, promoting talented employees regardless of their age.
How's the job going?
Yes, sir, it can be tough. But whenever I receive words of gratitude from guests from various countries, I truly feel glad to be doing this job.
That's good to hear.
The president nodded in satisfaction, and we engaged in small talk. We moved to the break room to continue our conversation more comfortably. The topic of serving international guests came up, and the president suddenly asked me,
Emily, you can speak French among various languages. How did you become so fluent?
I shared my experience of living abroad for a long time. I was shy at first and couldn't speak much at all, but it was thanks to the boy living next door that I learned foreign languages and became able to actively communicate. I have never forgotten my gratitude towards that boy and have always wanted to meet him again. I spoke to the president, looking firmly into his light brown eyes. During my first interview, the president had complimented my French. I couldn't recall at that time, but after getting the job, it all made sense. Looking back, I realized he was my first love, Louis.
Emily.
He scratched his brown hair, showing a shy demeanor. The president's name is Louis Wilson. When he laughs, I can see the resemblance to the boy from my childhood.
I've been concerned about Emily too. I thought we might meet someday if I was assigned to the USA, but I never imagined you'd end up working at this hotel.
It wasn't quite the dramatic reunion I had hoped for, but I think our feelings were fully understood by each other. Although it ended with just a handshake at that time, Louis continued to talk to me afterward. Then the distance between Louis and me gradually closed. Eventually, Louis and I started dating, and 3 years after our reunion, we got married. I continued to work at the hotel even after our marriage. Guests come from various countries and regions, each with different appearances and languages. What's important isn't how someone looks or where they live. It's about accepting differences and trying to understand and meet halfway. I love my job because it helps ensure that our guests, with all their differences, can have a comfortable stay.